A very good morning to you, Mr. Maluleke. Thank you so much for your time. So the minister says they are ready. Do you believe her?
Good morning, and good morning to your viewers at home. Yeah, we have had a briefing on Friday night where all the head of departments have really presented their plans, and therefore we believe that indeed our learners and our teachers are ready. Of course, we have some concern, but it's critical that we indicate that the report that we have received have convinced us that there is a commitment from the side of the department to ensure that there's safety and health equipment at the level of the schools.
Some of those concerns, do you mind sharing them?
Yeah, the concern we have is that the numbers are still rising. Basically, we have not started, seeing the numbers going down. In terms of the WHO, recommendation is that the schools should be able to reopen when the numbers are really declining. However, we have seen that they are very fluctuating in our country. The other concern we have is that the communities are really not looking after the schools in terms of the sanitation issues, like the tanks that have been fitted last year have been stolen, the food that the learners are supposed to be having have been stolen, and so forth. So those are the things that really are concerning us, that the community doesn't really protect the schools and take education seriously, and we're really concerned about that.
How much more can the minister and her department do to ensure that we do not see, our children and the teachers, because she did mention that about 1,600 people in the sector have lost their lives due to COVID-19. So how much more can she and her department do to ensure that this kind of number is not, what we see in the weeks to come?
Well, with the vaccination, although we know that it's not a guarantee that you may not be testing positive or not to be infected, but with the vaccination, we believe that it provides some kind of protection from severe illness and possible mortalities and so forth. So the minister and the Department of Education, their duty basically is to ensure that social distancing is not compromised, that we have good water at the level of the school, so that we wash our hands frequently, and making sure that all the necessary non-pharmaceutical intervention in the form of masks are adequate on the level of the schools and therefore are of good quality. That is the responsibility that the department and the government has. However, it is our responsibility as teachers and as communities to ensure that we wear the masks, we wash our hands, we follow all the protocols and so forth, and therefore we don't gather unnecessarily to the extent that we can find ourselves having to be super spreaders. The schools must be the barriers against the transmission, and we believe that education should make a difference in terms of us being able to defeat this particular virus. So it is our responsibility as well.
DDG Simone Geyer did mention that the 2021 calendar is being reworked, of course, as it should, and that about 5 days have been lost. Is that something to be worried about, that there are days that have been lost in the school calendar?
Yes, because of the unpredictability of this particular virus and when the peak will come or not come, clearly is that we'll continue to be losing some days, and some schools will be closed and some schools will continue. So the 5 days is a concern, because in terms of the Human and Social Science Research Council report that they published, basically they found that in 2020 only, we can then begin to say that our learners have lost so much time that they are at the level of 2015. In other words, 5 years of schooling has already been lost in terms of the proficiency level that we require for our learners. So they have not factored in the number of days that we've lost in January this year and as well as in June this year. So when you factor those things in, indeed, we should be concerned that we are going to have a generation that basically will have got serious deficiencies or deficits in terms of competencies that are required, and therefore it is time that we really question the orthodoxies that have been there for centuries of this testing and so forth, and start beginning to build real skills that we need in our country for our learners to be able to progress well.
Has the Basic Education Department handled, so far at least, we've gone into the third wave, have things been handled accordingly to the satisfaction of SADTU? Because, of course, there are concerns from some quarters that the department actually hasn't done what it should have done, given that, third wave is something that had been spoken about and something that had been predicted months ahead. But are you, as SADTU, satisfied with how the department, how the minister has handled things?
Well, we're not satisfied in the manner in which they're handling things because, when they speak about the virus, they speak as if, no, look, the learners may not be testing positive, therefore, because the learners are not susceptible to the transmission or to the infection, therefore, things are actually normal. Things are not normal. We're not talking about learners only. The school does not only consist of learners. It consists of teachers, it consists of general workers and assistants, and it consists of grandparents and parents at home. So if a learner gets to be infected at the level of the school, the likelihood is that it is the family that is going to suffer. So you need to factor that in and not only speak about the learners not being susceptible to the transmission, and now we know that they are. So those particular things have got to be handled with very, 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 serious, attention in terms of the provisioning of the necessary sanitation and ablution system, as well as the quality non-pharmaceutical interventions such as masks and so forth. So we cannot say that we are satisfied because we begin to understand that the only thing that they always talk about is the learners, and they don't talk about the learners are not coming from somewhere else in the ocean. They're coming from home. And the grandparents are the vulnerable people. Even if they are, vaccinated, they are still vulnerable, and we need to then factor that in terms of our precautions.
Mr. Mugwena, thank you very much for joining us here on NewsLink this morning. That is SADTU General Secretary and Mugwena Maluleke.